Hello, my name is Soraya Anastasia, and for my graduation project, I conducted an interview with two women from the Middle East to gain a better perspective on their cultures and religions.
Well, sometimes I go out by myself and I look across the water and I think of all the things what you're doing, and in my head I paint a picture.
I was born and raised in Yemen, Sana'a, Yemen, the capital of Yemen, and we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina when I was 11 and a half years old.
I grew up in Amman, Jordan, and I was there from when I was a baby up until 10 years old. My wedding is not going to be arranged. Neither one of my parents had a traditional or an arranged marriage. They actually met each other at work and got to know a little bit about each other and took it to the next step. But there won't be any dating or anything of that sort. But my parents and I have agreed that the person who I'm going to be spending the rest of my life with is someone who I'm going to choose. Also keeping in mind that my parents' input is highly valuable and respected. If there is someone my parents have in mind and I don't feel like I'm compatible with that person, the marriage is not going to happen. And vice versa. If my parents dislike a person and I like them a lot, my parents are going to consider my happiness. So the steps leading to the wedding day would be, it would begin by having an interest. So if I'm interested in a guy and he's interested in me, let's say we met each other at school or at work, he would have to take it to the next step, and that's by him calling my father and telling him that he's interested in marrying me. So what happens next is he would be invited to the house with his family, and we would talk, get to know each other a little bit, very casual. And after that, if there is an interest, if the families like each other, if him and I like each other, because we would get some time alone to talk to each other, then they would return again. And when they do that, he would bring maybe a small gift like a ring, something of that sort, and we would have a small engagement. And the difference between the engagement here and the engagement in our culture is that our engagement is not so much of a big commitment. It would be so much of a promise that he's not going to talk to anyone else, and we would get to know each other a little bit more to see if we're compatible, see if we're on the same page, and if we are, then we would have another engagement, which is the Islamic marriage. So we would be considered Islamically married, but we don't live with each other yet until we have the wedding ceremony. And by the way, this is all cultural. And then it could last from 3 months, 6 months to a year, just depending on how much time they want to get to know each other and plan for the wedding.
Okay, the hijab is like a protection cloak. It is my way of not only expressing myself, but also of controlling what the world sees and interacts with me. For example, if a girl goes outside with a bikini versus if a girl goes out in the way she dresses will change the way people act or interact with her. So my hijab is my way of telling the world or demanding the world to treat me certain ways and interact with me one way or another.
The significance of the hijab, which is the headscarf, to me is that it was a command by Allah or God, and I have to obey what Allah commands me to do. With that also comes modesty, for people to get to know me for who I am as opposed to what I look like. It is a means of protection and overall how I represent and carry myself. But first and foremost, it is something that I choose to do because God ordered me to do so, not because of anyone forcing me or pressuring me in doing it.
my native country, Yemen is a very collective family, then society, and then self. That's usually the order of importance. But in my specific family, we weren't that collective. We were very individualistic, which is why we fit in so well in America. Even though you can find the rest of my family in one village, literally in Yemen, we're kind of separated all the way in the United States. So it's a little, I don't know, it's very different. I wouldn't say we're the typical Yemeni family at all.
Family life was actually very important when I lived in Jordan. We were very family oriented. That my grandpa owned a large building, and him and my grandma lived on the 3rd floor, and on the 2nd floor it was divided into 2 houses. One house was me and my family, my brothers, and in the other house was my uncle, his wife, and kids. And then below us were 2 other little houses, and those were for rent. Every single Friday we would have either a breakfast or lunch with the whole entire family. We would all gather at my grandpa's house, and in the evenings we would sit outside. We had a very, very large front porch, so we'd all gather, sit down, have talk, stay up till pretty late at night during the weekends. So we were very, very tight.
One way is the general culture of education, for example, and like that is one thing that I highly value in the U.S. And you notice this in the Arab Spring, but if you try to say or do anything that the government doesn't like, you'll probably end up in jail or be gone by the end of the day, and no one's gonna hear from you. So that's one thing that I didn't like about Yemen. But after the Arab Spring, I feel like there's a chance that people are waking up and trying to change their own situation.
After coming to the United States, some of my opinions on culture have changed for the good and for the bad. Positively is that because we are such a minority here in the United States, I valued and appreciated my culture a lot more, and I wanted to stay in touch with it so I don't lose it. Negatively is I see that people mix culture and religion together, making religion less of a priority and not following it the way it's supposed to be.
Women's roles in society in Yemen is the same as the U.S. I have female family members that are college graduates. They work, but they still have households, so they cook for their family at the end of the day, and they take care of the house, they take care of the kids and everything, and the next day they wake up and they go to work. And it's the same here. But I also have other family members who never finished high school. They just got married, had kids, stayed at home. So I think in Yemen is women have more leeway because they can drive, they can vote, they can do more than other countries like Saudi Arabia. And it just depends on the family, because sometimes some families are more strict with the girls than they are.
So do you
with the
think
boys.
your country itself is less strict with women than other Middle Eastern countries?
Yes, like in Saudi Arabia.
When I lived in Jordan, again, I was only 10 years old, so I didn't pay attention to my culture, roles, things of that sort. But after moving to the United States and listening to people who'd come and visit talk about the Middle East, or specifically Jordan, I noticed that there are differences. One of the main differences is that women are a lot more independent here. A lot of them focus a lot on their career. Overseas, typically they are housewives. They take care of the home, the children, while the man goes out. One way that my opinion has changed on women's roles after coming to the United States is, firstly, I was a very advocate of women's rights, and I still am, but I believe that there should be a limit. If a woman wants to pursue a career, that's totally fine, but I believe that she shouldn't neglect her home. Her kids and taking care of the house is a priority. If you can do that and have a career, that's great. But it is very difficult to find that balance because being a stay-at-home mom alone requires a lot of energy and hard work.
Some changes include Facebook, smartphones. I know last time we went to our village, it was about 14 years ago, and they didn't have electricity. But we went back in 2011 and they had smartphones. But they still didn't have electricity. So it was on and off electricity. And so technology there is it's so funny because you can go to an internet cafe and you can get Wi-Fi and free internet in like fancy hotels, but if you go down the street, some people don't even have electricity. So they're at a clash, and it depends on who you know and what you are born into, I guess, because certain families hold a lot of the wealth and most of the country doesn't. And the Arab Spring is good, but it's also bad in Yemen because Yemen has outside interests that hold it from being truly free. Because even though it was advertised that the president stepped down, the vice president became president, really. And the president came back and he's all up in their politics. So there's not that much change.
When communicating with relatives, they indicate that there has been a significant change in Jordan. Jordan has become a lot more advanced. It's become a lot more westernized. It's become a lot more liberal, which are all positive things because that will lead to a democratic country, and that will lead to freedom of speech, being able to practice whatever it is the way that you want without the government taking full control. One of the negative things that my relatives talk about when referring to significant changes that occurred in Jordan would be they are deterring from their culture and they are trying to implement the Western culture, causing a clash because they grew up a certain way and now they're trying to act another. They don't go together, especially if you were brought up Muslim.
Okay, so I think a human being is judged by their intentions and their actions. We all have roles, I guess you could say. There's different things, we have different roles we play. So outside, I work in the library. So outside, I'm a librarian. At home, I'm a daughter. If I'm married, I'm a wife. If I have children, I'm a mother. It would be the same for a husband. It doesn't mean that if a man is married that he can, I don't know, he plays those roles as well. He works wherever he works. He's a father to his kids. He's a husband to his wife. He has rights and obligations upon all of them, from his job, from his wife, from his kids, and it's the same for the woman. So at the end of the day, we're judged by our actions, our intentions. It doesn't really matter if you're a man or a woman.
What Allah identifies as the difference between men and women's roles in society, according to what I've learned and after studying some of the verses in the Quran and the sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is that first and foremost, there is a biological difference between us. Allah created men to be a lot more stronger physically, and this is generally speaking, and women to be a lot more compassionate and nurturing. Therefore, the job of the man is to go out, work longer hours, provide for the family, while the woman who bears the children is there to take care of them, nurture them, make sure the house is in check.
So Sharia law dictates everyday interactions, and it dictates big things like stealing, the other things too. Because Sharia law gives rights to people. It talks about giving alms, volunteering, and different things that go into everyday interaction and everyday society. And that's what Sharia law is. To me, Sharia law is a way of life. It is.
So it's all encompassing.
It is all encompassing, basically.
In my own words, Sharia law is a code of law consisting of Islamic jurisprudence, teachings of the Quran, and sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, to help Muslims live the Islamic way of life, as well as to be able to implement those laws secularly and religiously.
The education system, well, comparing my education experience in Yemen versus here, the elementary school that I attended was not very, they weren't rich, so, or the area wasn't rich at all, so there was a limited number of seating, and usually either the popular kids or the kids who were teacher pets basically got the seats, and I was neither. So I sat on the ground most of from first grade, because you had to pay extra for kindergarten, so I never attended kindergarten. First grade until 6th grade, because 6th grade is in elementary school in Yemen. 7th grade is middle
I've
school.
only studied up until 4th grade living in Jordan, but if I had continued, I definitely would have attended a 4-year college and most likely continued to obtain a master's degree in whatever field I was interested in. Right now, education is encouraged by everyone, especially with the not so great economy. You need a degree in order to find a job in Jordan.
I think women's roles in the US are about the same as in Yemen. It just depends on where you live and what your situation is.
In this country, because it's so diverse, because of the many different people, cultures, demographics, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what women's role in society is. Some women want to be stay-at-home moms, especially in the South. Some women like to pursue a career. Some women want to do both. So you have a little bit of everything. But women in this country are most likely a lot more independent than women from overseas, especially that there is a high percentage of single moms, so they are required to work and provide for their children.
The actual cloth, yes, I do think it is required. For men, I know a lot of people don't even think that men do, but I think men, if anything, have more of a hijab. I think men, if anything, have more. They're more susceptible than women because to sin to everything. I think women have more strength and self-control than men. So I think men have a bigger hijab than women. So action-wise for hijabs, hijab action-wise is there's that YOLO, you only look once. So you look and you see a person and you know that they're there. If you look again in a lustful way, that's really it counts against you. Not to look at girls, even if the girl's wearing a miniskirt, he's supposed to have self-restraint. Look once, see she's there, okay, and then he looks away all day, and he doesn't get away with it. Girls is the same way. If a guy's walking around shirtless and he has a six-pack, you're not supposed to look. I do think people interact with me differently when I wear the hijab. I don't really have a counter argument for it because I've never not worn the hijab outside, simply because when I was growing up in Yemen, it was part of my uniform. I did take it off when I got home because it was just like when I was running, it just started choking me, but that was because I was running weird. And when we moved here, it just became, my mom did tell me, if you don't want to wear it, don't wear it. But it was at that point, I didn't want to take it off. And so I don't have that point of view of not wearing the hijab. Another setback. You get snide comments like, go back to your country or stuff like that. And it's stupid, really. Unless you're Native American, this isn't your country. And it's funny, but you can't really say anything to someone who says that because those comments come out of ignorance. Put yourself in their level, in the person's level, when you start an argument with an ignorant person, usually. And if they said an ignorant comment like that, usually it comes from a dark place.
I can't say, in my opinion, a law requires a woman to wear a headscarf or not. If you are a Muslim, then you have to follow the Quran, and the Quran clearly states that women have to cover. Some of the benefits for wearing the headscarf, and speaking from personal experience, is you will not be judged by your outer appearance. You are a lot more respected than a girl who is barely wearing any clothing. People admire your skills, your personality, and what you have to share. And last but not least, we are not objectified. The only setback that I can think of a woman wearing the hijab is pursuing a type of career. Some careers will prevent a covered woman to obtain a job, for example, becoming a news anchor or a news reporter. I don't think America is ready to see a covered woman on television telling the news, especially that many of the stories that are covered on the news are about the Middle East, and they're not very positive. So a Muslim woman telling such a story, she might be viewed as biased, or she might get a lot negative feedback that can affect the news station. Other than that, I don't see the hijab as an obstacle at all. She can participate in sports, she can go out in public, she can voice her opinion. It is widely accepted in terms of living a regular day as an average American citizen.
I think interactions between men and women is pretty straightforward. For me, there's a couple of categories I would place interactions in, and this is just for me to be. One way is professional interactions. So professional interactions usually is with work, job interviews, basically anything that's job related, even like volunteering. If you're meeting to make something happen. Another
Like a
thing is
project.
family, and that's basically your immediate family. And there's actually a list in the Quran of immediate family that you can't marry, and those are the people that it's okay for you to not wear your scarf around. So, and those are the people you can't marry. Basically, it's uncles, aunts, and those are that specific family, and it includes parents, brothers, sisters, and stuff like that. And that's two categories. The third one is significant other. So for significant other is usually, for me, I don't have that person yet, but it would be the person that it's okay to give hugs to, kisses, and all that good stuff. But those are my three categories, and so when I interact with men, I try to put them into
In my
one of those
opinion,
two
and after
categories.
studying this topic, men and women interacting is fine as long as there are limits. There's no such thing as girl and guy friends. There have been non-Muslim studies about that, which say the same thing.
What the U.S. or Americans can do is so many different things. Volunteering in different organizations that send aid to Syria. That's one way. Another way, sending aid to the right people. When the U.S. sends aid, I think, by U.S. I mean the government, because I know that there is a difference between the government and the people. So when the United States government sends aid to Middle Eastern countries, for example Yemen, they say this is for women's rights, and they send it to the government that's been there for 33 years. The government then takes that money, hands it around to whoever's in power, and maybe feeds one or two families, takes pictures, and send it to the U.S. So maybe one way that the U.S. can help is by making sure that the aid money is going to the right place. And I think every person can make a difference by just learning, knowing what's going on in the world, not listening to Fox News and different voices in the media that really the whole media is one voice. You just have to go out of
Countries such as Pakistan and Afghanistan have their own government and their own way of dealing with their people. So I don't think people from the United States should intervene or try to implement their ways to liberate the women of those countries. What I think might be possible is Muslims from the United States can educate them or lead by example to show them, hey, the Quran teaches us 1, 2, 3. The way you're treating your woman is contrary to what the Quran teaches, and it's oppressive. So I think they should use an open-minded, passive, leading by example kind of action.